5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi there, welcome to Matters Now. This is Dr. J, and we're going to be doing a little bit different style video than we sometimes do. I've been doing some interviews, some of them from people who are trying to convince people of things, mostly Globers trying to convince flat earthers of stuff. And so, kind of going along with that interviewing idea, I have someone I'm interviewing today. Goes by King NiCO online, and I'll be kind of talking to him. And so, my goals here are to understand King NiCO's theology. I might be interrupting him quite a bit, trying to direct him, but hopefully, we'll be nice and be able to get a good understanding of what he is kind of thinking. I'll ask him about his background. Of course, he's welcome to say no to any of those questions if he doesn't feel comfortable to ask about growing up or whatever. But I'll kind of get to know him a little bit better and what brought him to the theology he believes today. So, King NiCO or NiCO, I feel weird calling you a king. I know it's kind of a probably just more of a joke thing, but I usually don't call people
Yeah,
king.
no, that's fine. It's great to be here this evening. You can just refer to King as not a title. It's more of, say, my last name, so NiCO King, but it ended up coming beforehand. So for
Mm-hmm.
my channel and for the resistance, I guess. So yes.
Gotcha. Well, the reason you and I know who each other are is because I one of the hosts here on Matters Now, not one of the main ones, just periodically kind of contribute. And you have a YouTube channel where it sounds like you do a lot of stuff related to the Bible, but recently you've been getting back into some flat Earth debate stuff, and that's kind of where we talk to
Yeah.
each other on an after show. And based on your debates and kind of the things you're talking about on the after show, I wanted to kind of interview you and talk a little about your theology because just through the after show and stuff, I was kind of having a hard time to putting it together. So I'm going to kind of interview about your past. Like I said, I'm not trying to get personal, and you're welcome to be
Yeah.
generic or refuse to answer the question or whatever. Kind of bring us up and where you've kind of how you've gotten to your beliefs today. So tell me a little bit about growing up as far as religion. Did you grow up in a Christian home or any some kind of Christian home or?
So I actually grew up in an atheist household. My father was an atheist. He, though, was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic. So I come from a Roman Catholic family. So it was very confusing with the whole religion aspect growing up because we didn't celebrate anything. My dad just says, oh, there's a creator, anyone can be God. So it was very blasphemous teachings that thankfully I didn't take on to my own. I always trusted in God and Jesus and the Bible, but I just needed to find my own way, considering that I came from a household that wasn't a part of that. We didn't go to church. There was no Bible in my house. My dad pretty much mocked and blasphemed the Bible and Jesus. So it was very hard trying to find my faith and knowing that I was drawn to that faith and that holy word of God rather than anything else. So yeah, my dad was very rebellious to the church. As I said, he was raised in a Catholic household. He still went to his mom's every Christmas, which was very confusing, even though we were atheists. My dad said it was rubbish, but yet every Christmas we're having Christmas dinner with the family. So it was very weird.
Hmm. So was there, and your mother agreed with him, or she was less, not quite as aggressive, or was she a little bit
Um,
religious, or
no,
she in the
she just
picture?
followed him and took his lead on everything. She was very submissive to him, and yeah, my dad was the head of the household.
Okay. And so who was the one that sort of brought you in or introduced you to Christianity? Did you get taken to church by a friend or just read the Bible on your own at a certain age? Or obviously when you're small enough you can't read, so you're not gonna have
Yeah.
influence there. But what was the first kind of influences?
Well, first of all, it would have been my own experiences growing up. Like I had some wild experiences, whether you could say like out of this world type things with certain entities. So you could probably say that I was visited by some kind of demon as a kid, right? Because my mom, she used to practice tarot readings. So I believe that kind of demonic activity and crystal charging opened up doorways into our house. So I feel like due to demonic attacks young and certain dreams that I would have regarding biblical stories, even though I wasn't Christian or knew what the Bible was. When I did hear about the Great Flood, and then I connected it with the dream I would have of being in a flooded world covered in water, I kind of started to connect the two and found more of a connection, more of a relation with the Holy Bible and those stories than anything else.
So, what was you and your mom's understanding of the power of these cards or whatever? If she was an atheist, did she just think it was a trick, or she thought there was some universal power? Did she explain
Um,
that, or?
I have no idea. She'd do it with her friends and other family members, aunts, when there were family gatherings. They'd go away and they'd bring out the cards and this little silk wrapping and do whatever nonsense they would do. So I
Mm.
wasn't into that. Definitely not. But now, as I grew older and realized that, yeah, these are all reasons which added to demonic attacks, to the house being, the home not being blessed because it was an atheist household that was practicing witchcraft, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, when did you, I don't know, convert to Christianity or whatever? So, did would you
I was
say it was a
young.
moment in time? A certain time you decided to make the decision?
It
Is that
was
not how you
during
understand?
it was during school times, during
Okay.
Christmas time in early middle school. I would have been like 9, 10, 11. My dad tried to keep me home from school during the Christmas season when, the school and everyone would be participating in carol singing and Christmas plays. And, the first year or two, I remember being kept away and not being involved. And then I was like, this isn't right. I want to do this. I like these songs. So I told my dad, says, yeah, I'm going to school Christmas time. I'm doing all this. My dad's like, oh, so you're a Christian now. And that was pretty much it. I said, I guess I am. So
Mm.
yeah, I was very young. I was like 9, 10 when I had to tell my father that, yeah, I believe in Jesus. So that was pretty much it.
So did you start going to church at some point when you got old enough to be able to decide for yourself? Have you ever been a church goer or what?
No, every time I did go to church, I found it boring. I would fall asleep. I found it very satanic. I would get more seance, evil, demonic, ritual vibes than prayer, blessings, and worship of God and Jesus in church. And I've been to a lot of churches, been to churches all over Europe, in Amsterdam and stuff. I remember sitting there with headphones on so I can understand what the pastor was saying in whatever language he was speaking. So, and it was the same everywhere. As soon as they start humming and ahhing and sitting up and standing down and kneeling down, and especially in the Catholic Church when you have to go and accept the blood of Christ and the body of Him, and it's disgusting. I was like, who is this priest or pastor? Who's this? No, it's very ritualistic and satanic. So that was a
So,
big struggle for me. Yeah.
okay, yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it was a big struggle knowing that I wanted to be Christian, that I aligned myself with that faith, but then being at the churches and seeing who the people that represented that faith were all demonic. Every day on the news, every other month, there was some kind of story in the church of children being, touched by higher ups in the church. So it always gave it a bad look. And then it wasn't until I was older and realized that these stories were purposely done and put out there in media to give Jesus, the Holy Bible, and God's Word a bad name. So
Mm.
I had to separate the Holy Bible, Jesus, and God from the church, from the Catholic Church, from any organization or entity that thinks that they own and have say over the Bible. I realized, no, the Bible is the religion, is the faith, is what it is. It doesn't associate with church or the Vatican or anything like that.
Okay. So, who would you say influenced you? Any influences? Do you, or I mean, we obviously can't be completely uninfluenced, but do you have anybody that you looked up to that you felt like, they were also on the same path as you as far as just finding the Bible? Obviously, you didn't find that within pastors or priests or anything like that. Have you, if you were like to put in a good word for someone, can you even think of a name you might come
No,
up with?
not no one. This kind of awakening at such a young age in the family I was a part of, you get mocked for this stuff. I was called dreamer, or oh, you're living in la la land, when I would speak my dreams and how they seemed biblical and how I felt connected to the Bible and those people in those stories as my ancestors. And people are like, no, that's crazy. You watch too many movies. So, I never had support or anyone to look up to but the word of God itself.
Hmm. So do you feel a part of any community as far as like there's people kind of with you on this, whatever you would call your spiritual journey, or do you feel pretty much you're on your own?
Well, I always felt like God was with me, which is why I left home at 15 years young. So I
Mm,
grew up in England, and I made the decision to just leave home at that age and go on this mission, pilgrimage, adventure, whatever you want to call it. I was like, I want to not live this boring, you know, basic life. And I said, I'm going to take a chance, do something different that not many 15-year-olds do, and leave the nest and go out there and just do something for myself and hope for the best. And that's pretty much what I did.
and remind me, you were still in Europe at this time when you decided to leave home, or you had,
Yeah, I was
and did
15.
you get a job, or
Um,
how'd you make it, or did you move in with a friend, or?
well, I have family here in Canada, so I told my grandma I wanted to live with her, and pretty much she said that was okay. So I was young. I was working a paper round in England when I left home. I was
Mm,
still a
mm-hmm,
paper boy, getting up, delivering my paper rounds, making my £60 a week, which was good money for a kid back then. So £60 still a good bit of money.
mm-hmm,
And yeah, I came to Canada, lived with my grandma for a bit, signed me up for high school. I was still in school, and that's it. And then
mm-hmm.
my journey just has gone from there. I never got to stay with my grandma too long. She kind of got fed up after a year or so and said, "Oh, I've already raised my kids. You got to go do it by yourself." And I was like, "What? I thought I was going to live here till I was 30." She's like, "You're crazy." And that was it. I was like, "Here we go."
Yeah. And so did you move into an apartment at that point, or?
Um, I had to go to the shelter to tell the truth. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, I had a bit of homelessness at 18, 19. Just went to a shelter. I got fed up of the couch surfing or whatever you want to call it, or trying
sure,
to
right.
tie myself to other family members because I knew they were too busy doing their own thing. So I just said, I got to do this. I went to the shelter, and I always in my mind said, God is guiding me. This is just experience. This isn't me. This is like a test. It's for me to learn so I could be strong enough to lead this resistance one day. Because I always had that in the back of my mind, even since a child, that one day I would lead a resistance against the evil that will rise, as the book of Revelation says.
Mm. So during this time when you were, still pretty young, but you, were, y- just high school, then getting out of high school, out of your grandma's, kind of on your own. Did you spend a lot of time reading the Bible still? Were you pretty dedicated to your faith
No,
still at
not
that
yet.
point?
I was
Okay.
still just, the thing with me was because of my dad's corruption and his atheist teachings, I was almost convinced that Jesus didn't exist, but I knew God was real. So I didn't become born again until I was 22. So
Mm.
yeah, it was very young. It didn't take long, especially the after being homeless and in a shelter and on the streets at 18. By 22, God touched me and I was born again. So I've known Jesus is the Lord and Savior officially since I was 22.
And have has things changed for you since then? Big change in your life, you think,
Always,
or?
everything has just been changed. It's hard to explain because a lot of people will be like, so where's your Ferrari? Where's your mansion? I'm like, that's not the change that God gives. The change is awakening. Is I've learned so much. Like I have this understanding. I could read the Bible and understand it better than I've ever understood it. Like every time I go to it and read a book or a chapter I've read many times before, now because of what I've gone through and where we are now, it kind of stands out a little different. So um it's just something that I'd rather have than any other thing. To be close with God, to have understanding of the Holy Bible, to know that Jesus is King is better than anything you could ever ask for.
So, how's your relationship with your parents now? I mean, was that like you haven't spoken to them since you were 15? Have you built back some bridges? Like I said, you don't have to say any of this if you
Um,
don't want to, but
the thing is, once I left home, that's it. Like I didn't expect to have the path. I didn't expect it to be so difficult, but I was young, I was naive. I was just thinking, oh, I'm going to move to another country and everything's going to be great. I didn't ever think I'd be homeless or in a shelter or have to apply for welfare. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
those things I never planned for, but I knew God was going to protect me, and He did. So my parents, once I left, I never went back home. I never had the chance to. I never saw my dad again. I don't have a relationship with my mother. You know, I'd speak to them or on the Skype or the FaceTime, but my dad passed last year, and then I just realized I never went back. All those calls aren't the same as visiting and being there, because you know when you're on the phone, you're in phone mode. You're like, oh
Mhm.
hey, what's going on, and everything's positive, and you're like, how you doing? And then as soon as you hang up the phone, you're back to your real life. So
Right.
my
Mhm.
dad for the past since I left home has just been phone call dad. You know, now I
Mhm.
realize, oh, that's fake, and I was fake, and it just wasn't what I expected. So that's one thing I regret, is not being able to have gone back to visit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think about going and seeing your mom, or do you know if she'd be open to that, or maybe it's just a financial issue why it wouldn't be able to happen, or have you thought about that?
She's in Canada actually. She came back to
Oh,
Canada
okay.
after my parents divorced. So, but she's never really been a role model or a good motherly figure, to tell the truth. Not all women are born to be moms. So, and she was one of those that weren't really, you know, um, a good mom, to be honest. So, yeah, I've been pretty um, parentless since 15.
Mhm. Are
My
you worried
grandma's
that
been there. So
as she
she's been a good part of that parent figure, even though I'm just a grandchild, but I guess
Mhm.
that's the closest thing.
Are you worried that if your mom passes away, you'll have some of those same regrets that you did, that maybe you wouldn't have mind seeing your dad again, or are you not worried about that, or have you thought about it much?
I think about it, but I I just it's sad, but I don't feel guilty. I just feel like just a little saddened that things were the way they were, but I don't feel guilty because I know that I was innocent in this. I didn't ask to be brought into this world by these two people, and I did all I could to be a son, be a decent person, not be whatever a bad person might be, or you know. So if anything were to happen, I'd be sad, but not torn apart in regret.
Mhm. Mhm. So you kind of um on your own, 22, became a Christian. When did caring about flat Earth come in? Did and frankly, how much do you care? Do you care a lot? Is it just something, one of the things, or is it just kind of a
Well,
minor thing you care about?
so I was born again at 22, and I started reading the Bible since then again, and just trying to read it in a different way than I've ever read it, because I was now born again, and I'm having that experience and that feeling, and it's like being touched by God. So it's like, yeah, nothing else can give you that. So I started taking it seriously, doing Bible studies with other friends. um I even did Bible study with Masons. I had friends that were trying to become Masons, and then yeah, you realize that their path is different to yours, and that's it. We separate eventually, but I did have friends that were trying to get me to the lodge, but I never resonated with that. I was happy just reading the Bible and trusting Jesus. I didn't want to trust that any man had better understanding of it than just me reading it for myself.
Hmm. How do you kind of put together in your mind, at least, it's something that I've thought a lot about, and I don't know if I have great answers, but many people read the Bible and come up with different interpretations, right? And and obviously, if our interpretations are different, someone's got to be wrong, right? Well, one of us is wrong about it, right? I'm a Baptist, and you're probably not, and one of us is probably wrong about that. I How do you put it together? Like, how does God, do you think, allow there to be so many different interpretations? I don't just mean some. I mean, there's quite a few. Have you thought about that very much, or how do you put that together in your mind, anyway?
So the Bible says in Revelation at the end, it just says that no one can change this word or, keep it from man, which is why we have it. If it was, but yeah, there's like hundreds of not thousands of different versions with different translations, different languages, but I feel that's purposely done to have an excuse to change the word and have it pushed around. But there's always one text that remains in its authentic self as it was written. And I believe that is the closest thing to that would be the King James Version Bible in an English speaking language. Obviously, there's the Ethiopian, the Hebrew, but we're not in those days anymore. And God did change the languages as spoken about during Babel, with the fall of the Tower of Babel and Babylon. So the languages, if he changed the languages, there must have been rules. So this would be my interpretation of saying that, yeah, there's rules to the name of Jesus. So some people are like, oh, if you want to worship Jesus, you have to use the original Hebrew name. So the English name is worthless, or the French version is worthless, or the Spanish version. I'm like, so how can you say that if we're not in that era where the majority of the world or the nation is speaking these languages, Aramaic, Hebrew, whatever it may be? We can't be born after Babel when God jumbled up the languages and still try to go back and hunt down and speak those languages. God changed it for a reason. So I believe that if we're speaking English, there's an English counterpart to the Hebrew counterpart and the Aramaic or the Ethiopian.
Okay, so let me just describe my understandings of different ways to look at it, and you tell me how yours might differ. One, which is common, which would be the one where I would take, is the original manuscripts are inspired by God. So whenever Paul or whoever wrote it down, those were inspired. And then, of course, they were copied many times, and maybe even they weren't copied perfectly, but because of all the different copies, we can put it together and come up with what we can be super confident is correct. But there was no magical one Greek text that got copied over and over perfectly from Paul, and therefore we can be confident that the word was preserved through the many copies, and that's actually an advantage. But we would still say they're just copies, and any translation, any language, that's all they are. They're a translation. They're not perfect or inspired, anything like that. Another way I've heard it described, which sounds closer to yours but may not be quite that way, is some think that the King James Version has been re-inspired by God. Does that make sense? Like they think the originals may be inspired, but at some point God then inspired the King James. So we can basically read the King James almost as if it's the original manuscripts. How are you the same or different than those two ways I
I don't
described?
believe that. I believe that the King James Version is the text that resonates more with the truth of the story without having any changes. But the fact that they tied in King James to this book is I don't like that, because King James wasn't a Christian. He wasn't a believer in Jesus. He was a sodomite. So I feel like they use him and that name to taint the word, which is closest to the copy of the original text. So
Okay.
they're like, well, they have to keep it. So I know that Satan works very accurately. So I know that dates, verses, the word, it's very accurate. It's very on point, as much as people like to think and say that, oh, it's not as accurate. You know how things get changed over time and translated and get, not with the Holy Bible, though. And I think the people then, as they wrote it from the inspiration of God, knew the importance of it. Everyone knew, even the enemy knew the importance of it. And I believe that once they got their hands on it, they were too scared to change it themselves. So they says, yeah, we're going to just make many different versions and change those versions, keep this version and get a character like King James and wrap his name on it. So, to give it that tainting of the original.
Okay. I'm gonna jump to the audience. Robin, member for 14 months. Thank you so much for that. We have a few questions. Let me make sure these are nice. We don't want to be. Oh, have you been in the military? You sometimes dress in military clothing. Is that just like a style choice for fun, or
No,
what's
I'm
the connection
militarized.
there?
I come from a military family. We've represented in America, Britain, Australia, Canada, and Germany. So it's just in
But
the recent generations that, because my dad rebelled against the system, he didn't want to join the military and do his service or be a Christian. So he just told me I can do my own thing, and I wanted to join the military, but I didn't want to join the British Army because I knew I was Canadian and I wanted to return to Canada and join the Canadian Army. So like I said, I left home at 15, and when I came to Canada, I was going to join the Canadian Armed Forces. I wanted to be a pilot because my granddad was in the Air Forces, and my cousin was already and still is in the Canadian Army. But 2 weeks or so I came, and then I left for a bit, and then I came twice. So I came at 15. I went back home because I had to finish my GCSE exam in England to finish high school. I finished that, and then I came back at 16 in the summertime. So I started school in the September, and the first 2 weeks of school, this was 2001, we had 9/11. That kind of turned me off from joining any military, and that's when I pretty much went rogue from then. I was 16 at the time, and I knew at 16, watching it live, that this was an inside job, whatever you want to call it. It was not the narrative that they gave us. So I had to, yeah, give up on my dreams of joining the military and focus more on this resistance, because I knew that this was a sign of demonic ritual activity.
so the military stuff is you kind of feel a connection because your family was in the military. At one point, you kind of wanted to join, but didn't end up. But you kind of keep up, at least dress wise, dress in some military stuff because you
I
feel that
just
kind of.
I feel like I'm destined to be a part or lead an army that's already been here. It's God's army, the resistance. So when that time comes, um, yeah, I'll be ready to be a part of that army, not any government. I just have
I see.
distrust in government. So I
So,
can't serve in an army that's controlled by government.
so do you, when you think about that, do you feel that like you think you'll lead a physical army, like there will be guns
Oh
and
yeah, it's
will
real.
be?
The army's been here. There was an army in Babylon. I've dreamt it. I know it's not scripture, but these are things that's it's encoded in my DNA. And because I've never been jabbed, I believe I have still connection to the past. It's genetic inheritance of memories. And I believe that certain logos, the camo pattern has been here from before. The Shemites resisted against Babylon and Nimrod and the Hamites. There was war from back then after the flood, but those things have been hidden from us. And that's why they tamper with our DNA to make sure we never get messages from the past or any visions or anything like that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I believe my ancestors started all this military stuff, and like with anything with government, and the Hamites and the Babylonians or the Canaanites, they will steal from the people of God and invert everything, can make it disgusting. So all the military, they basically kill legally, right? In these camo clothes, in these chevron logos or whatever it is. So I feel like that kind of stuff was stolen from the people of God and turned into this government disgusting war.
So when you lead this army that you think you may do someday, are you going, you're going against the US government, the Canadian government?
The New World Order.
And do you have any, I don't know, names or anything specific of who those would be,
So
people would be?
the New World Order is the whole world united as one government, which it is and always has been. So you cannot have a new world order without an old world order. And we're going to have a one world religion, one world currency. The internet is a big part of that, the World Wide Web. We got artificial intelligence now. I believe, is the beast of Revelation, is going to be ruling this whole system. And it will have an antichrist version of itself that will have people bow and worship it. So
So how
yeah.
do you feel you connect to the end times? Are you leading this army against the Antichrist? Are you thinking what you're doing is going to happen before the Antichrist? Or how do you
So
think if
this
you
war, it's a spiritual war and physical, but it's not like how our visions perceive war is like, Vietnam versus the USA. There's not going to be like helicopters and troops bouncing out and rope. But no, it's still going to be a war. There's going to be two sides, or three sides actually. There's going to be the people that are working for the establishment that want to enforce the New World Order. There's going to be the slaves that really don't know what they're involved in. They don't know there's a God. They don't know that Satan's controlling the world. They're just existing, trying to mind their own business and be good citizens. And then there's the born agains that know that this is revelation. We cannot be a part of the system. We cannot be digitally tracked. We cannot be in a society that has banned the Bible and has book burnings and stuff like that. Yeah, so definitely an antichrist system.
well, we'll move on. I'm still a little hazy in my mind who you're shooting at exactly. Other, the New World Order is pretty general, but we'll kind of move on. The Bible talks about the Eucharist, Nico. Oh, Max, he's probably going to be spicy here. You know him. The Bible talks about the Eucharist, Nico. Jesus did that. How about I'll ask it this way: what do you believe about the Eucharist or communion or whatever word you want us to do? Do you think that's something that we're supposed to be doing? Are you thinking that's
No,
something we're supposed to participate in? Or
no. I believe the Vatican deceives people to think that we have to be like Jesus, be us Jesus, speak like him, walk like him, do us him. We cannot do that. That's blasphemous. It's impossible. We cannot be and act as the Son of God or God in human form. So I don't feel that drinking his blood or taking his body and all that communion and stuff, it's a satanic ritual. It just feels like it and looks like it. It has nothing to do with worshiping Jesus or repenting or confessing on anything. It's something different.
so do you feel the same about baptism then?
I Yeah, so I'm very conflicted with that. There's a pastor here that I went to his church back before 2020 and all the nonsense that happened then. And I had already woken up to flat earth and a whole bunch of other things. So I did want to get baptized. So I had this pastor who I believe would be the right one. And after speaking to him and mentioning the flat earth and the firmament, and then have him tell me, no, he just shut it down. And I was like, because I was convinced, and I still am. I know for a fact Earth is flat. It's a biblical creation that's written and in the Bible and Genesis. So for a pastor, I didn't want to be baptized by someone that I felt didn't understand or relate to the Bible as much as I did, and that was one of my biggest revelations and awakenings. And I was like, damn, I kind of want someone to know the same thing. So I've just left it off since then.
But still open to being baptized possibly someday.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it. I just feel like there's finer details that need to be done properly when performing this. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Lisa asked, "Did you go to college?" I assume that's no. I mean, I don't know how you'd have
Yeah,
pulled
I've
that
been
off
to
unless.
college a few times, got a few certificates and diplomas. So yeah.
Uh, I guess I don't really care. It doesn't really matter if you went to college. Did you get like an associate's or
Yeah,
anything like that?
I've studied health, the general arts and science, health. I was going to do nursing, but I realized that wasn't for me. And now I've done video editing, um, videography, photography, and now artificial intelligence. And I do have um, a diploma, you could say, for that and a certificate. So, yeah.
Okay. Some Christian universities offers Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies programs, and like the school I went to would be one that would do that. Do you have any thoughts about going that direction, going to a college or university or anything like that?
No, I don't think you can learn from those places because those are funded, and they have an agenda to push, and they make sure that they have those classes and studies to make sure people don't learn the stuff that I've come to realize and learn and understand without, Harvard or any of these universities that are pushing religious studies, right? So,
Hmm.
but I definitely would like to go and challenge them on what they're teaching and be like, how come you haven't ever gone over Genesis 7:11 that tells you the flood took place on the 17th day of the second month?
So it sounds like you're not against someone going to college to become a nurse or something like that, or higher education in that sense. But do you see any value in education in the biblical realm? Like, let's say me, 20-year-old me, I was like, hey, NiCO, I'm thinking about, getting, wanting to learn more. What would you recommend that I do?
I feel like the only way is to live and experience and just do it. Like that's how I did it. I never went to church. I just lived it and had it's just after a knowingness and a true belief. You have to have that 100% faith that no matter what happens, there's God is watching you. You got to talk to him. I did a 7-hour walk one time in the middle of the night, and I walked till my feet bled, but I didn't know until I got home because my socks were all red. And during that walk, it was, to me, that was like a pilgrimage. I walked 7 hours to get from my place of work home. It's a long story, but I just walked, and during that time was just talking to God the whole time. Just, I was what, 19, 20, and I was like, what's the rest of my life? What's the future look like? I want to serve you, but I need your help and guidance. So those are the kind of discussions and conversation I'd have with him. And then when I get home and just lie down after exhaustion on the driveway, and be like, God, just give me a sign. And then all of a sudden it would start raining down on you, like light rain. It would be like, that's all I needed. And then I'd just go inside. So it's just little things like that. You can't expect God to show face and speak to you, but just ask for any little sign. And that to me was like being so young and having that strong belief, knowing that he was real. The fact that I spoke to him for 7 hours and I finally just asked for a sign and just a few raindrops was enough. And, it depends on the person and how far you're willing to go to prove that your faith is real, that this creator, this God is there and is listening.
Do you find that these beliefs that you have, the Christianity, there's lots of people who are Christians or, claim Christianity, but you obviously kind of have a unique take on things. Do you find this like difficult as far as dating? I don't mean like getting a first date or whatever. I'm sure you can go on a date if you want to, but do you find it difficult as far as like finding someone who is kind of with you on this and feel like would be a good life partner and everything, or do you not care about that, or is not a concern, or?
um I really don't know. I don't think there's anyone out there that understands or feels that people, like women, will pretend for a certain amount of time, and then it will just get too much for them and they want to go back to their normal life and their ignorance and just pretend everything's fun, and just they just want to sit at Starbucks and in general, I mean, not literally, but women are very innocent. They need to be led by a man, as the Bible says. The husband is the head of the household. So, a woman, yeah, I find women struggle a lot with this kind of truth in a world where there's so much outs and distractions. So, it's tough. That's why I'm 40 and not married with no children, because it's not something I want to play around with in a world where the Jezebel spirit is running rampant.
Hmm. So I mean, just a little bit about me. I don't, I'm 41 and I don't have children, and I sometimes think, as I get older, um, you know, who's there to take care of me, right? As a pastor, I take care of a lot of, or I visit a lot of elderly people and spend a lot of time with them, and I see how important their children helping them as they get older is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they're they take them to doctor's appointments, and as you go older, it's hard to understand what in the world the doctor's even saying. And I see the kids being helpful, and I'm like, golly, I don't have any kids. Am I gonna like struggle with this as I get older? Do you have any worry about that, or do you feel like you have maybe nieces and nephews,
Um,
or you?
a part of me feels that none of us will be here in those times. So it's not that I hope to die before I get that old. It's just that the way things are going, I just don't see it. But it's hard to say. It's maybe a part of me doesn't want to get to that point. Maybe I kind of want things to just happen now, trial and tribulation within, I want to I want to know that we're in those 7 years. Otherwise, this isn't a place I want to be and spend a couple more decades in a world that resembles Sodom and Gomorrah and the pre-flood world that was flooded, and a society that is just against God. I cannot deal with it. So I do hope this is the end.
So if you would find out that we're not in the end times, if that was revealed to you in whatever way, you would find that really
I'd
depressing, or
I'd be I'd be beside myself. I don't know what I'd do. I'd never um blame God or anything like that. Not ever. I know not never to do that, but I will be pretty much I, I I'll be checked out. I just wouldn't care. Like, it's just, who's to say? I don't know. I don't know. I definitely, the Bible speaks. That's why I'm convinced this has to be the end, because there's no way. Jesus's words are firm. They tell you what he likes, what he doesn't like, what's a sin, what will get you thrown in the lake of fire, and we're in that society. We have pride parades. We've, PDF file people are almost there at being legal to be publicly seen with infants and stuff. That, it's just, this isn't the world. It's not for anyone.
do you think it's possible that if you found that we weren't in the last seven, that maybe there'd be another ministry God might have for you that doesn't have to do with the end times, or?
Well, with everything that's happening, and all the information that's being revealed to me, all the secrets, all the truth that has been hidden, Jesus said in these times they will be revealed. And not just this month, not even 2 weeks ago, I had revealed to me the date, the very day, the month, the year of the great flood. And I've been trying to tell people that there's evidence all over this world of every nation being flooded. And I know we live in a society where those stories come off as myth and fantasy, and people do not believe. Even Christians themselves that are practicing Christians, go to church, they don't believe the Garden of Eden story. They don't believe Noah's Ark flood. They just don't believe, but they just have the book and have the faith, and call themselves a Christian. And that's also in the Bible. It says that lukewarm Christians will be spewed out of God's mouth, because he'll say, I never knew you.
Okay. People, of course, interested in flat earthish stuff. Not my interest as much, but we got a question here about that. Uh, Please ask NiCO, what is underneath the flat Earth model? Do you care about this? Is this something you think about, or not really? Or
Underneath,
I don't know if the Earth's flat. Does it go down forever? Or, do
no.
you think
So you
about this?
can, the Hebrew model shows, you could say a globe, and within that globe, there's water and land that lays flat somewhere in the middle of this see-through ball. And we'll call the sky. So the whole surrounding is a firmament, and
Hmm.
it's sitting on four pillars, so it's firm and stable, and it's got four corners where there's angels that are guarding the very earth on this box. Where it's incredible. I think Rob Skiba's depiction of it was really good, and one of the closest ones to explain how you can have water on the outside of this firmament, and how that water is also contained outside. It's incredible stuff. So yeah, I don't believe there's anything under. I don't believe we're in space. I just believe we're living in God's creation that is sitting firm and still in one place, not traveling anywhere. We're just still.
So, so just try to imagine. I know you're confident, very confident this would never happen. If someone took you to space somehow, got cheap, you flew to space and you went up way up there. Just imagine. I know you think this is like a almost 0% chance that this would ever happen. What would that do to your sort of worldview or your understanding of the Bible or whatnot? Would that be like a huge deal? Like, for me, I could find out the Earth's flat. I get, if I found out I was wrong, it wouldn't change too much about my Christian belief because I don't think the Bible cares about the shape of the Earth. But
Well,
if you found out that your understanding wasn't quite right, would you be like really shook? Do you think, or
first of
what do you
all,
think?
I don't think that I will be found out. That can't happen, first of all. And just
Hmm.
say hypothetically, it's not
Right.
going to
Yep.
change anything
Hypothetically.
because I was a strong believer in Jesus and God while
Hmm.
still believing in the whole space NASA system. I
Hmm.
didn't become a flat earther until I was 31, I believe. So yeah,
Hmm.
I was in my early 30s. So I was 30 years believing in space, and I spent almost a decade being a born again Christian, believing in space. I was like, I need to go search
Hmm.
for God. My mind was like, I need to get to space, get a spaceship, Enterprise, whatever it is, travel the universe and find God. So, with no matter what model they give us, there's a God. He's the
Hmm.
author of the Bible, and he came to this earth as Jesus Christ. Whether he's somewhere in the universe or he's right above us on his throne, it wouldn't change anything.
Okay. Um, Can you ask if NiCO can recite the Lord's Prayer? I'm guessing this might be no. If you didn't go to
No.
church where you recited it over and over, I would imagine that you haven't necessarily memorized it.
Which one is that? Is that the Our Father who art in
Yep.
heaven? Yeah, I
Yep.
know all of those. I could do that.
All right.
Yeah, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive those that trespass against us.
Not too bad. Wasn't Mary a prostitute? Did she?
No, that was Mary Magdalene, not Mother Mary.
This might have been in reference to something you said earlier, and now I've sort of lost the plot on
So that's
knowing
the thing.
what that was.
People are looking too much into the characters that we can't prove. We should look into um, the creations of the fallen angels. We should look into the world and its environment. The Bible says there was a cataclysm, a flood that submerged even the highest mountain. There will be evidence of this. And believe me, in the last 10 years, I've searched we have the internet, right? We have video footage, drone footage of any village, any country, city that you want to see. So I've done my research and discoveries without even have to go into these places. I just always knew it in my heart. But seeing and hearing the same stories of a great flood from every religion or culture, even Asia, Africa. So you have to go to the tribes people, not the education system, because they're gonna tell you lies, right? When you go to like the bush in Africa and you speak to tribes, they'll tell you, yeah, there was a great flood thousands of years ago. It's like their ancestors have lived there and never moved since then, never became a part of the system. The same in, say, New Zealand or Australia with the Aboriginals, or in India in the Himalaya mountains, or the Ganges with those yogis and stuff. They'll tell you the same thing, and they'll even take you to some place and show you evidence of the Great Flood. And it's like, what? How come this isn't mainstream? Why did I have to have this feeling, this inkling, and have to go search it out? So it's like, search and you will find it, but don't expect it to come find you, right?
Hmm. Another comment here, and I'll kind of take your side maybe, or not on your view, but hey, NiCO, as a woman, I get rather annoyed at your view. No clue how young you are, but with those views, you should be at least 100 years old. This was for a while ago, but I would
Yeah.
say NiCO's view isn't that isn't that old. There are plenty of other people that would agree with
Well,
NiCO
that's in
on
the
the way he
Bible. I
described.
think it's Ephesians 5:22. It says that the wife must submit herself to the husband, for he is the head of the household. So that's what
Yeah.
she's referring to. It's normal. A woman that's in her feminine would understand that, especially if she's with a guy, a man, in his masculine. And those roles have been reversed. So obviously, this lady might be in a masculine, and she's with a man that's very submissive and docile. So that's why women have to step into a masculine, because the men have been emasculated, right? So that's why the home has been destroyed. It's hard to have proper leadership under God, because women are more susceptible to demonic interference because they produce the Nephilim. Men, us men, we don't have the same connections or hauntings that the Nephilim perform on the women as ourselves, because they gave birth to them, not physically, but their female ancestors gave birth to them. So the demonic entities and the demon spirits of the Nephilim that are trapped in this realm constantly harass and attack females and women.
So just to be clear, I wasn't agreeing with NiCO, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying he's probably not the only one that would say this. It's not too that abnormal for him to argue a view similar to this. Another question from Max. What's your theological justification for the Book of Enoch? So, for example, I wouldn't consider the Book of Enoch as a part of the canon, but maybe you do. You want to talk a
Yeah,
little bit about why you think Enoch is part of the
of
canon?
course it is. Enoch is one of he's part of the genealogy from Adam to Noah. So why would any one of those? It could have been the book of Jared, right? It could have been the book of Methuselah. Every book should be included because they're all a part of the genealogies of Adam, spoken about in Genesis 5. It names them, it ages them at the age they were when they had their sons, and then it tells their sons what age they were when they had their sons. So the importance of Genesis 5 to include everyone from Adam to Noah should be important. So the book of Enoch should be included, which it most likely very well was and still is in some versions of the Holy Bible, specifically the Ethiopian Bible. Include the Apocrypha, the Book of Enoch. Remember, Enoch is the father of Methuselah. Oh no,
Okay.
he's the son of Methuselah. Yeah, he's the father of Methuselah. Methuselah is the father of Lamech, and Lamech's the father of Noah. Enoch, God took him. So Enoch only walked earth for 365 years of age, and in those times that was young, because Adam lived to 930. Methuselah was the oldest recorded living human at 969 years of age.
Mm-hmm. All right. Obviously, Max doesn't agree with you, but I'll let you guys fight that out on another stream. We won't.
It doesn't contradict the Bible. It actually matches the Bible perfectly, and I found those verses that match and says this should be right here in Genesis, but that's what was taken out.
Max 5, Max V. I'm not sure. I live in Asia. No flood myths here. I don't know if we want to go into a log argument about flood myths right now. I assume you disagree and think there are flood myths in Asia. I don't know anything about flood myths in Asia personally.
No, definitely there's a flood. I mentioned Genesis 7:11. So this huge revelation that pretty much no biblical scholar has ever come up with. They've only ever come up with a date, and I believe that was James Ussher, and he lived in the 1800s or 1600s. Sorry, he died in 1656. He dated the Great Flood as the year 1656 AM, Anno Mundi, year of the world. So from Adam to the flood was 1,656 years. And I find it funny that James Ussher also died in 1656 AD, right? And they stopped at the date, never came up with a date, but somehow something told me to check into it, and I came up with a date. Genesis 7:11 says the 17th day of the second month. And somehow I said that the second month is May 17th. So if you look at any original calendar or recently, they'll tell you that the new year starts in April. which means May will be the second month. So going by that calendar and applying that to Genesis 7:11, I got the date Wednesday, May 17th, 1656. Wednesday, May 17th is currently an international day against homophobia, biphobia, transphobia. It's also an international day to learn how to swim, right? It's also,
Yeah, you mentioned this on another stream, I think.
yeah. So after going through that and realizing that I finally come up with a date according to scripture, May 17th, and then I did my Google and AI, ChatGPT, what is May 17th? I did gematria too. So the gematria of May 17th equaled 666. And then when I added the day, Wednesday, it equaled the year of the flood, 1656. So I was mind blown. I was like,
Mhm.
this is being revealed. And not
Yeah.
only being revealed, it proved that we are in a post-flood world with a flood rebellion that is still rebelling against God. So if you are rebelling against God, you're going to choose the day that God flooded the world to rebel back.
Gotcha. I'm gonna try to move us off the flood date thing. I know you're passionate about it. We just have a few more minutes. If you guys have any questions with a question mark, go ahead and drop those. We're about done here. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and NiCO talking about with other people I've interviewed, is changing our mind. What are something in your life other than your conversion? That was a good example, maybe of a big, huge change in your life. Other than that, what's something maybe in the last 5 or 10 years you'd say, I've changed my mind about this, and what do you think caused you to change your mind about it?
So flat earth, again, I know it's not, I was already with God and Jesus, but
Mhm.
somehow waking up and realizing that flat earth was real, it did bring me to my knees and I was in tears. I was like, I thought I knew God and Jesus, but I was so wrong. I never knew how close they really were and how powerful they were. So that revelation and waking up to flat earth helped me. Well, I was already a believer, but it just strengthened it even more. And then what was it you were asking again? So after waking up to
So
flat earth,
I was asking you, what something big you've changed your mind
oh,
on, and what was the catalyst? What was it that influenced you? So, for example, I would say what often causes me to change my mind, and I would like to pretend this isn't true, is I actually argue that often what causes us to change our mind isn't just logic. There's emotion behind it. If we really like a person, we're more likely, even just in a friendship way, we're more likely to hear what they have to say. And if someone's mean to me, I'm likely not going to listen to them at
yeah.
all, even if what they're saying is logical, right? Like, so I was just kind of like one example of something you've changed your mind, what you think influenced you on that, or how do you think the whole mind changing thing works? Even on silly things, just it doesn't have to be end of the world, crazy stuff. Not crazy, but end of the world, big and big, huge things.
Yeah, I find it hard to trust people. I listened to so many people and found out they were shills or something. I listened to all of them from David Icke to Alex Jones and just realized you can't listen to anyone. Everyone's got their own agenda and some kind of secret mission behind it. It's just obviously whatever happened in 2020, just nothing needed to be said. To me, that was revelation right there playing out. Um, Especially with the worldwide lockdowns. It's like, well, how much more apocalyptic can you get, right? And seeing some kind of control and a new world order in power, that for me was just, yeah, this is official. That's why I went full out with my resistance and just we blew up, just crusaded all over the place, took on the government, didn't listen to any of the lies. So once you realize that what they did was lie and that every nation followed it, then you're like, wow, this is the new world order. How can people not see it? So yeah.
Can, when you say we resisted, is this a group, a club?
Yeah, there's
Uh,
other people that are awake. There's people that knew and know that the government is tyrannical. So as soon as the first lockdowns took place, um, I'd say about 20 to 50 people showed up downtown to resist. And yeah, it just grew from there. We went from 20, 50 people in a park to millions, holding down the capital city in Ottawa for 3 weeks straight during the convoy. So we grew from just a small group in the park that knew something was up. We worked hard for those 2 years to spread awareness, to show the truth, to show everyone that we weren't listening to the government. We weren't getting contaminated and dropping dead. We were actually happier and getting healthier by being out there and meeting strangers. So yeah.
So are you thinking those are the people or the kind of people that you'll lead someday when
It
you have
was
the
practice for sure. I really thought that this was it, but obviously it was like some kind of um, simulation program just to test the masses for the real big thing when it comes. So there's a lot of people that are anticipating what's happening. I've been reached out by an actual secret resistance that I think are underground, and they contacted me and just said, "We're watching, we're getting ready." And I'm like, that's it. I don't know names, I don't have addresses or callback number, or I've received all kinds of messages over the years in support, trying to give me help, let them know that there is a resistance, and it's just one of those things. I don't know. Yeah, I don't believe I can be manipulated. I just discernment, right? You can tell if it's an AI bot trying to manipulate you or if it's a real Christian person that's been waiting doing this for decades.
Well, NiCO, I appreciate you coming on and doing the interview. We're at about an hour, and I don't think we have any more questions left, so I'm going to wrap up. I would like to say I do find it incredibly frustrating when people are really attack you. Now, maybe you've done it to other people. I don't know. We're not all perfect,
Yeah.
but I don't like it when people attack you personally. Obviously, I don't care if they say you're wrong and they think you're wrong about stuff. That's all fine. But when I've certainly seen many people go far beyond that, and I apologize for that. That's rough. No one
No,
likes
that's
that.
not for
No one
you to apologize for them. I'm honestly, I'm too old and mature to be phased by what people say, especially the stuff I speak of. I'm talking about Great Flood. I'm talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, Babylon. Like, I'm giving the Bible life. Like, everything it says, I can see us really happening. I can decipher from, I can make it, I can have people see it for the real reality that it is and take all that fantasy away from it. I can take all that satanic deception off the Bible and people can see, oh, this isn't a Disney fantasy book. It's actually a science factual book, a historical recollection of this earth and our species.
And I also would like to say, even if some of the earth, what you think is going to come true in the future, as far as you leading, even if it doesn't happen, you're a great, you're a valuable person. You're made in the image of God. You're super valuable. Whether you ever lead a big group or whether you don't, you're important. And just the fact that you're a human being means that you have a ton of value. And so just appreciate you coming on. Thanks for joining us. And maybe we'll see each other around in the crazy debatosphere here on YouTube.
Oh,
So
yeah, I don't feel like I'm going to be left alone. People definitely, I'm going to practice. I got to get my stuff together for these debates, but I appreciate you. God bless you also, and for your kind words. It's not something I really want to do, but it just seems like my whole life has led up to leading an army, right? I just, everything that's happened, all the skills I've learned, it just seems inevitable. But if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to cry and be like, oh, what do I do now? There's so much to do and teach in other ways. But it does feel to me, from what I've seen and experienced, that God's army needs to be raised up to take on this evil new world order.
all right. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you around.
Thank you so much.
I want to say thanks for all the audience for joining us. Appreciate it. I know my style is different than Max. We're the yin and the yang, and we got Issa here too. So appreciate you guys joining us. And I know we got more content coming out, and we'll look forward to you on some future streams.